This video is going to help you learn how to solve systems of equations using matrices. For this video, we're going to focus on solving 2 variable systems by hand and 3 variable systems by using the graphing calculator. So first, when we were trying to solve a system of equations using matrices by hand, we need to write the system of equations in matrix form. So here's an example of a system of equations. I'm going to write this in matrix form. So the first matrix is going to be a 2 by 2 matrix, and it's going to be made up of the coefficients of the x and the y's. So my first 2 coefficients are 3 and -2. My second 2 coefficients are 1 and 2. And this will make up my first matrix. Then that gets multiplied by matrix x, y. And if you remember from multiplying matrices, we always multiply the row of the first matrix by the column of the second matrix. So I would do 3 times x plus -2 times y, and that would get me back to my system. Now, this is going to equal a 2 by 1 matrix that has 9 and -5. Now, to help simplify this process, I'm going to label this 2 by 2 matrix A and this 2 by 1 matrix B. Now, when we are trying to solve for x and y, the first thing we're going to do is find the inverse of matrix A. And we learned how to do this the other day, but I'll kind of quickly review. So when we're finding the inverse of matrix A, the first thing we need to find is what's the determinant of matrix A. And remember, that's AD minus BC. So that's 3 times 2, which is 6, minus -2 times 1, which is -2. So the determinant of matrix A is going to be 8. Now, when I find the inverse of matrix A, I always do 1 over the determinant times, I'm going to switch my A and D, so the 2 and 3 are going to switch, and then the B and C are going to become the opposite sign. So my 1 was positive, so it's going to become negative. My 2 was negative, so it's going to become positive. Now, before I had you multiply through by the 1/8, but for right now, we're going to leave it like this. So now I'm going to find the inverse of matrix A, which I just did, and I'm going to multiply it by matrix B. So my inverse of matrix A is 1/8 times 2, 2, -1, 3. And I'm going to multiply that by matrix B, which is 9, -5. Now, remember when you multiply, we can multiply in any order. So again, I could multiply 1/8 times this first 2 by 2 matrix, then multiply that answer by the third matrix, or the third value, which is a matrix. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this matrix times this matrix, and then multiply it by 1/8. So remember, when we multiply matrices, we multiply the rows times the columns. So I'm going to leave this 1/8 out in front because I got to remember to multiply by that. So I'm going to have 2, this first 2 times 9, which is 18. Then the second 2 times -5, which is -10. Then I'm going to do the same thing, but in the bottom row. So I'm going to have -1 times 9, which is -9, plus 3 times -5, which is -15. Now, when I combine those, I'm going to have this 1/8 still out in front, times 8 over -24. Now, when I multiply by 1/8, well, 1/8 of 8 is 1, and 1/8 of -24 is 3. So my final answer is that x is 1 and y is -3. I'm going to skip down to question 3, and I'm going to do this one for you, and then I want you to try 4 on your own. So remember, first thing we have to do is write our system in matrix form. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to write it as a matrix. So 5, 3, 2, 2 times x, y equals 4, 8. And then remember, I'm always going to refer to my first matrix as matrix A and my second matrix as matrix B. So, and remember, I'm going to find the inverse of A and I'm going to multiply it by B. That is how I'm always going to solve for x and y. So the first thing I have to do is find the inverse of A. So I have to do that by finding the determinant first. So in this case, if I do, my determinant would be 10 minus 6, so it would be 4. So I'm going to have 1/4 times, switch my A and my D, change the signs of my B and my C. Okay, now I'm going to do that inverse times B. So I'm going to take 1/4 times 2, -3, -2, 5, and multiply it by 4, 8. Now remember, you can multiply in any order, but I think it's easier to multiply the whole numbers together, or the integer numbers together, and then multiply by the 1/4. So I'm going to leave the 1/4 out in front. And remember, we are going to multiply our rows times our columns, okay? So I'm going to do 2 times 4, so that's 8, plus -3 times 8 is -24. Then I'm going to do -2 times 4, which is -8, plus 5 times 8, which is 40. And that will give me 1/4 times -16 and 32, which means my final answer is that x is -4 and y is 8. Now, pause the video now and try example 4. When you are done, play the video to check if you are right. Okay, so when you solve number 4, you should have gotten that your determinant was 7. So your inverse of A was 1/7 times the matrix 3, 2, 1, 3. Then when I do the inverse of A times B, my final answer, well, I'll get that x is 3 and that y is 7. Now, when we're looking at 5 and 6, these are 3 by 3 matrices. So we're going to do these in our graphing calculator. So I'm going to kind of talk you through how you would do this in your graphing calculator. The first thing you want to do is write each of these in matrix form. So I'm going to do that first. So I would have a 3 by 3 matrix with -1, -5, 1, -5, -5, 5, 2, 5, -3. Now, instead of just x and y, I have x, y, z. And then my third matrix would be 17, 5, and -10. Now, in my graphing calculator, I would enter this first 3 by 3 as matrix A and this 3 by 1 as matrix B. Once those are entered into my calculator, I would exit out to the menu where you guys do your computations, like you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and you want to do inverse of A times B. And you will get an answer in a 3 by 1 matrix, and make sure that you always write your final answer as x, y, z. So for example, when you solve this one, if you put 5 in your calculator, which I would recommend doing now as practice, if you need to pause the video to have time to enter the matrix, I would recommend doing so. When you enter matrix A and you enter matrix B in your calculator, then you do A inverse times B. You should have gotten that x is -1, z is -4, or sorry, y is -4, and z is -4. Similarly with 6, I would write it in matrix form. Then I would enter matrix A and matrix B in my calculator. And when I do A inverse times B, you should get that X is 4, Y is 2, Z is 0. Now, I would strongly encourage practicing how to do 5 and 6. If you need help remembering how to enter matrices in your calculator, you can refer back to the video from finding inverses and determinants on your calculator, or you can come ask me.